This incident happened to me and my friends over 10 plus years ago, on the night of my 14th birthday party sleepover, and it's a memory I still can't forget. At the time, my parents had a partly renovated garage on our property. It had walls and a bathroom, but the garage door wasn't completely sealed, and the windows had no curtains. Whenever we had friends over, my parents allowed us to hang out in the garage. Our property wasn't completely isolated, but the nearest neighbor was nearly 2 miles away. Back then, we lived in a place where people didn't really lock their doors, and we had never experienced any issues on our street. So, the day of my birthday party arrived. Until then, my parents had let my brothers stay in the garage, but I hadn't been allowed to have friends sleep over there yet. However, being the mature 14-year-old girls that we thought we were, I pleaded with my parents to let us have the sleepover in the garage instead of the living room. My mom was skeptical, but my dad agreed, considering it was my birthday. After a day filled with sugar and driving my parents crazy, we finally prepared to have the sleepover in the garage, with the strict instructions to go to bed and turn off the lights by 11 p.m. It was also my responsibility to lock the garage roller door from the inside since my parents had the key at the house. I dutifully locked the door, and we settled in for a night of more sugar and TV. At 11 p.m., we turned off the lights, but sleep eluded us. So, like typical teenagers, we decided to play a game of hide and seek with the lights off. We were about 3 rounds in when it was my best friend's turn to seek. I was hiding partially behind a cupboard next to the roller door. Everyone was giggling as the first person got caught, and then I heard giggling coming from behind me. At first, I assumed it was an echo because it seemed impossible for someone to have found a hiding spot behind me when I was pressed against the wall and door. The second person got caught, and the giggling from behind me continued. Now, I was starting to freak out, but being the foolish teenager I was, I didn't want to spoil the game. So, I quietly moved to a different spot, facing one of the windows. It was quite dark outside, but the moon provided enough light to cast shadows. Inside the garage, it was pitch black. I was focused on not getting caught when I saw a shadow pass by the window and stop. Now I was certain that someone was outside, but I thought it might be my dad or my oldest brother about to catch us out of bed. I froze. My best friend ran straight into me and started laughing. I quickly shushed her and whispered, "My dad's outside. We need to get back into bed." We swiftly gathered the girls and quietly climbed back into our beds, thinking we had managed to avoid getting in trouble, as we didn't hear my dad say anything. I turned over in my bed, but the shadow outside hadn't moved. By this point, I was in a state of major panic. The shadow eventually moved away, but then scratching sounds started coming from the garage door. The other girls had also noticed it at this point, and we all started to quietly panic. We huddled together in my bed, hoping that whatever was happening was just a result of our sugar-induced imagination. Then came the knocking on the door, accompanied by more giggling. We were frightened, but we didn't scream. I had received a phone for my birthday, but it was inside the house with the rest of the presents, so we had no way to quietly call my parents for help. Instead, we yelled at the intruder to go away. This was met with more giggling and then banging on the windows. We could see the shadow, and it appeared fairly big, indicating that it was either a grown man or a large teenager. In a desperate attempt to shield ourselves, we threw a mattress from one of the beds against the window, blocking the intruder's view. However, he moved to another window. In a state of panic, we decided to hide in the bathroom, leaving the door partially open so that I could see outside. Then, the garage door started rattling and banging, as if someone was trying to force it open. Throughout this whole ordeal, the intruder hadn't stopped giggling. Overwhelmed, I finally gave in to my fear and let out the loudest scream I had ever produced in my life. The other girls joined in screaming too. Suddenly, the noise at the garage door ceased. We cautiously emerged from our hiding spot and saw the lights on in the house. My dad was running towards us while a car started up and sped away from the side of the road. We didn't have time to see the car clearly before my dad unlocked the door with a key. He found 5 hysterical girls and quickly ushered us over to my mom, who managed to calm us down. Finally, she let us all sleep together in their room on the king-size bed. Suffice to say, it took another 2 years before I could muster the courage to sleep in that garage again. Any subsequent sleepovers were held in the house, and my friends and I were so terrified that we slept with the lights on for the next few nights. From that point on, my parents made sure to lock all our doors and windows. About 10 years ago, when I was 15, my Aunt Sarah, best friend Emily, and I gathered at my grandmother's house where Sarah lived and spent the evening watching movies, eating pizza and snacks. As it got late, around 11 p.m., we spontaneously decided to have a sleepover instead of going home. At around midnight, we went to bed, all of us deciding to sleep in Sarah's double bed, top and tail style. Of course, we didn't fall asleep right away. We chatted, gossiped, and goofed around like typical teenage girls. Around 1 a.m., we decided to try and sleep. We turned off the lights and settled into bed, but we continued to joke, laugh, and playfully fight over the covers. Sarah's room was on the first floor, or second floor for those in the US, with the bed and window straight ahead as you walked in the door. The head of the bed was against the wall with the window. I slept at that end, with my head against the wall, while Sarah and Emily slept the other way, facing the window. As I was slowly drifting off to sleep, I kept hearing a scraping noise coming from outside the window. I tried to ignore it, but it kept me awake. I lay in the darkness, eyes open, waiting for exhaustion to overtake me. Suddenly, Sarah screamed, leaped out of bed, and shouted, "Get away from the window!" This startled Emily, who also screamed. I looked at the window to see what was happening and noticed the silhouette of a person with their arms raised. We ran downstairs, screaming for my grandmother, who hurried out from the living room to see what was going on. Sarah was in tears, and Emily and I were in shock. Each of us tried to explain what had just occurred. Once we managed to convey the situation, my grandmother called the police and grabbed a bat before heading upstairs to check if the person was still there. He had vanished. The police arrived, took our statements, conducted a thorough search of the area, but found no trace of the intruder. They provided us with a contact number to report any suspicious activities or if the person returned. We decided to sleep downstairs for the rest of the night, feeling frightened and on edge. Sarah was particularly shaken. Emily and I did our best to console and reassure her, telling her that the person was gone and that we could call the police if they returned. However, Sarah looked us both in the eyes and shared something that still sends shivers down my spine. You see, Sarah lives in a large Victorian-style house in a peaceful neighborhood. Her window has a lock that is clearly visible, and she always locks it before going to sleep. This person this intruder climbed onto the roof and attempted to open Sarah's window. The strange part was that the person had their arms raised. Sarah explained that her window can open both ways, and she often preferred opening it from the top rather than the bottom. The intruder had clearly been observing the house for at least a day and chose that night to strike. Thankfully, because we were having the sleepover, we saw him. If Sarah had been alone that night, lying on her bed as usual, she wouldn't have noticed the silhouette. When I was in high school, I had a friend, Mia, and a second friend, Lily. Mia's family had a lot of money, and her huge house was located right next to our high school. So every time we had a break or anything, the three of us would go there, and we would also have a lot of sleepovers at her house. It was this huge rich people's house, so it was awesome to stay there. So one day, we decided to stay the night there, the three of us plus Mia's little sister, Anna. Their mother was gone for the night. We decided to put on some PJs and watch scary movies for hours. Anna went to bed before us three, and we just stayed in the living room watching TV. At one point, the alarm goes on. It happens sometimes, so Mia just goes to turn it off, and that was it. But then, like 10 minutes later, the alarm goes on again, and it scared us because it's not supposed to. Technically, the alarm was made to ring only when humans come by, because the house was located in the middle of the forest. So we all knew that sometimes animals would come by the house. So when the alarm was installed, it was calibrated for humans only. And it was the second time it rang. We started to get a little bit scared, so we went upstairs, opened the windows to look at the garden all around the house, and nothing. We even went on the balcony in the middle of the night. Nothing. I was alone on the balcony at some point, and the alarm went on again, and the automatic lights around the swimming pool turned on. That meant something was around the pool, and I was just above it. I got so scared I got on my knees and stayed there until my friend deactivated the alarm and the lights, and I ran inside the house. At this point, we were really scared and started thinking about what it could be. If it has to be any human, all our lights were on, so they knew where we were. We turned all the lights off, and all four of us went hiding downstairs in the kitchen without our phones. I don't even know why not even one of us thought about taking at least one phone. So we were there, lights off, scared in a huge house, with windows everywhere we could look. The alarm went berserk again. Anna screamed. Mia took her with her, reassuring her while walking to shut the alarm off. The light turned off once and for all. I was in the kitchen with Lily only, and we were just looking all around us. The alarm was upstairs, so the two girls were far from us. At some point, we heard footsteps right beside us, like right on the other side of the wall in the garden. It was fast, not scared, just fast, like that person knew where they were going. So we just froze, waiting in the dark, and jumped when someone, it was obvious, walked by the door and window right in front of us. We had a light, but it was another light that allowed us to see his silhouette. So they were at least two, running around the house for about at least 20, 30 minutes. This door was a windowed door, but there was Venetian blinds on it, and they were not closed. We were still not moving, and the girls upstairs were so scared that they stayed there. At least it's what they told us. Suddenly, we heard a voice, then a second one. I was unable to understand anything, but I heard it, and Lily and I were blinded by a sudden light right at our faces. We were literally not able to move, scream, talk. We were just frozen in fear. The light stayed there. Someone was seeing us through the blinds. Someone was watching us, being scared, and was just staying there. Suddenly, we heard a hard sound on the front door, which was closed. Lily didn't move at all, but I don't know what took me. It just woke me up, and I crawled to the door in front of me, closed the blinds, and just held the door in place, in case the guy on the other side tried to force it. Honestly, I'm small and thin. My little body was useless there, but I did it anyway. The guy at the front door was still trying to enter. Lily, still not moving, the two girls upstairs doing I don't know what, and the one, just a glass window away from me, started hitting it, trying to force it. It was still closed, but I grabbed the handle and hung in there for a while. He was just hitting and trying to open the door. All this lasted hours in my head, but I believe it was only a few seconds. At one point, the hits at the front door stopped. A few seconds later, the other one in front of me stopped as well. Then, the lights just moved fast everywhere. The alarm did nothing, so it was disabled as wanted, and there was nothing. Lily and I just slept in the kitchen, and the two sisters upstairs, nothing happened at all. It was over. The next day, Mia and Anna's mom came back home. We told her everything. Got a bit yelled at because we didn't call the cops. I took it wrong at the time, but I understand now why she got upset. She called the cops, who went to see the house and discovered footsteps all around the house and some muddy footprint on the front door, suggesting someone had kicked it. They told us it must have been some guys who were just doing some scouting. You know, when they just walk around the house to see how to rob it? It was common in this area. There was a lot of really big and beautiful houses filled with expensive things. The only thing I will never be able to explain is why they started being so aggressive. Originally, they were just walking around the house, but I think that if they were trying to see something or just look things up, they would have left when they realized we were inside, or at least left when the guys saw us in the kitchen. Well, they didn't. The moment they saw us in the kitchen, they start being aggressive and trying to force the doors to enter the house where we were. I don't know if they really wanted to rob the house. I will never, and honestly, I don't want to know.